Hi everyone, Jane here. Thank you so much for watching today and welcome to you all. Today I am working in my mixed media pad. I think it's Winsor & Newton, this one, I'm not sure. It's not a very expensive one, it's an A4 size, and I wanted to do something using different sorts of inks. So I'm starting off by gridding out my page with this tape. It's that painter's tape. And I wanted to go with some autumnal colours. We're sort of still in that phase here at the moment in the UK. It's sort of, the weather is, yesterday was really sunny, today is really rainy, and the leaves are still making all these beautiful colours. So I wanted to still keep capturing that whilst it's still in that season. I wasn't sure what I was going to grid it off as, but I sort of grabbed a thinnish one and I decided that I wanted quite a lot of different boxes. I've sort of started this with the idea I wanted to use some of my acrylic inks, but I decided eventually that I was going to go with these oxides. Now, the oxide ink pads I actually do not use that much. For some reason, I never know why. They're not an ink I reach for. So I'm trying at the moment to use things maybe that I don't reach for as much, because I do want to get the, use out of them. My inks don't seem to dry up, or anything. Maybe it's because we got sort of a climate that doesn't encourage that. But the colours I'm using were Wild Honey, Aged Mahogany and Fossilized Amber, which are some of my, I really enjoy those colours, particularly the Wild Honey. It's one of my favourites. And once I'd done that, I thought, oh, I'd just like to put a quick bit of stamping on. So I'm using this Darkroom door grid stamp with the Aged Mahogany, just to add a little bit more texture into that background. Then I went in with the acrylic inks, and this one here is a new one I recently bought. I just fancied having a more of an orangey colour. It's actually called Indian Yellow, but it does look more orangey. And I thought I'd get out the Princeton Catalyst tool just to spread it around. So I was trying out some different ways of using the ink. So I didn't want to go too mad with it because it is quite intense. So the first one I spread out with the tool, and this one I decided to sort of more try to print with it, so picking a little bit up and then sort of stamping it down to make little lines. I started off with a very small amount of the red and then decided that I wanted to add a little bit more in a moment, and so I'm just sort of trying to make some marks. I'm trying to stick to a horizontal and vertical type of pattern, but it's just a background, and I knew that I'm putting different layers of things over this, so it wasn't so much of a problem. And then finally, I've got this yellow ink. Now, there's not a lot left in this one, and I can't use the pipette because when I got it out a while ago, it was blocked, and I kept messing with trying to get it unblocked, and I actually damaged the tip of the pipette. So I decided to get a brush out, because that's another way of using your inks. So I wanted some more mark making in the background, so I'm going with this Lemon Creation stamp. I think it's called Round and Round. And I just went with a couple of the different circles. Now, my little archival inks here, and this is another sort of ink. This is an ideal for going over different surfaces, because it will stick to lots of different surfaces. It's a permanent ink once dried. My little tiny ones here are, because they're so tiny, I've had them a long time and I really do use them a lot. They are starting to look, some of them, like they may need some re-inking, but I haven't got any re-inkers at the moment. I'll have to look into that. So I went in with the ground espresso first, which was the sort of more browny brown, and then I got some of the sepia colour, which was slightly more reddish brown. And I'm just using these two shapes, and I decided that once I'd put the little ones down, I needed a little bit more of the big one. Then I wanted to add another layer, this time not ink, but a bit of acrylic paint with the gold. And I'm using the Lavinia Stencil Glory, which is a recentish purchase, and one that I really do enjoy. I really love the pattern on this, the leafy pattern, but it's sort of got quite a small pattern, so it does make for really beautiful stenciling. So I'm going in with my little stipply brush, and I was sort of pouncing and swirling with this one because I didn't have an awful lot of paint on my brush. And sometimes when I do these grid journals, I go really abstract and just go across the whole thing and don't worry about what's happening in each of the little boxes. But today I was making sure, apart from sort of like the first part with the acrylic ink and the distress oxide ink, apart from that I was then making sure that there was something in every little box, and I was sort of looking at what angles I had them and where the spaces were, and where I maybe wanted to keep space, or maybe where I wanted to put something extra. And so I was really considering it a bit more than maybe sometimes as I do. Now this is the Winsor & Newton ink. It's the Peat brown, because I decided I did need a little bit of contrast with something a little bit darker, and I didn't want black at this point. I will have some black in a little while, but I wanted to keep it in tone. This is a stamp from Be Crafty, a stamp set. I will list everything I've used in the description box below, but as always I would say that I am using things from my stash, so they're not necessarily the most recent of products, so I don't know what is and isn't available, which is why I don't put links. I don't put links because I don't know if things are still available, and also because if you're in different parts of the world, different things will be available. And a lot of the things I use, I would say have a check in your own stash to see if you've got something similar that you've already got that you could use, because you know this is basically just a leaf stamp. You don't have to use a stamp. You could use collage, you could draw a leaf. You know, you might have a big leaf stencil. Just because I'm using a stamp, you know, I wouldn't say that that's what you have to use. It's just to give a general idea. I used Versfine Clair ink in the Acorn, and then I put some clear embossing powder over the top just to give it a different sort of feel and look. And also because I knew I wanted to use some watercolours over the top, but I wanted to make sure that the lines still really stood out and were nice and dark. And so I added the embossing powder, because then it will keep the watercolour inside the lines and it won't sort of go over those lines and cover them up at all. So I'm cutting it close to the embossing. That's another good thing, is if you do emboss your images, it gives you a sort of a little bit of a ridge that you can butt your scissors up against a little bit, so that, you know, it gives you a bit more of a guideline. But it's a fairly simple shape to cut out, so it wasn't too difficult. And I'm using my little Tim Holtz snips. These are the 5-inch ones. They're my favourite ones to use. I like using small scissors. I know some people like to use large scissors for cutting out, because they feel it gives a smoother sort of run at it, if that's what you call it. I like the little ones. And then I'm just going around the edge with my Unipin brush pen it is a brush nib, and it is in sepia colour. So I just want to cover up that white edge that goes around, because as it's going to be slightly raised from the page, that is something that you would be able to see. Once I'd gone all the way around, everything was dry. I got out my watercolours, and this is my set that's got a mixture of different companies. It's got Daniel Smith, it's got Core, it's got Rosa Gallery. So I'm just sort of going in with, I think the first one was Aussie Red Gold, which is a beautiful colour, absolutely beautiful, fantastic for autumn leaves. I went in, I think, with a bit of burnt sienna. Then I went in with a bit of Perylene. I think I'm using all Daniel Smith actually for this one. Perylene Violet. And then I think I grabbed a bit of sepia at the end just to try and add a little bit of darkness. And then I left it to dry because that embossing was on there. I didn't want to reheat it. Here it is, all dried. And I also found a sentiment from Lemon Creation. It says nothing stays the same, and I thought that was very apt for autumn. And I just carefully removed my tape. Now, when I stuck this tape down, I hadn't sort of detacked it a little bit or anything like that, and I hadn't heated it up today before I removed it, but I was holding it very sort of flat as I took it off to try and make sure that as little as possible of the paper underneath tore, and actually it was okay today. So I'm just placing where I want my leaf to be, and I was just wanted something underneath it just to lift it slightly from the page. So I went with some black thread, and then I used my Pinflair Glue Gel just to stick it all down. So thank you very much for watching my video today. If you have enjoyed it, do please give it a thumbs up, and if you're not already subscribed, I'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button. Also, if you do have the opportunity to hype the video, that's really helpful, and it doesn't cost you anything and helps small creators by giving us points, and then YouTube promote the videos more. You will also see at the end of the video a list of my lovely members. A big thank you to them, and if you are interested in becoming a member, I will put a link in the description box for further information about that. So thank you ever so much again for watching, and until the next time, bye bye.